So today I get to interview one of my favorite people in life. This is the person that I have known the longest in the music business. And her name is Deborah Mannis-Gardner, and she's so friggin' badass. Hi, Deborah. I love
Hey,
you.
Wendy. I love you too. We're just like fanzine over each other.
I know. And I always do because I'm so proud of you. Like, you just amaze me. You're so great at your job and you're such an amazing human being and you just care. Like, how many years have you been in the music industry? 35?
Since 1990.
When you were obviously 5 years old because you're still young.
Yeah, I was five. I was five.
Me
Uh,
too. Me too.
so that's when I was doing other stuff. I was like doing, music videos, and that kind of stuff prior, but I really entered my first job in 1990 at Diamond Time.
Right. You were at a major label first. Didn't I meet you at RCA?
That was my second job. So I was at Diamond Time from 1990 to 93. Then we met in 93 at RCA Records. And then was it 94? Might have been 94.
I think it
And
was 93 because I started in 92 and I met you right away. You were the
right,
first person I really met.
right. So, well, I might have been at Diamond Time when we first met. We were doing these roundtables in New York City where we were.
I do remember. I remember you at Diamond Time. I
Yeah.
just thought Diamond Time was after RCA.
Nope. I was at Diamond Time, and then at the time, Skip Miller was A&R, God bless his soul, and Joe Galante had come over to be president of RCA Records. Carol Fenelon was head of business and legal, and they brought me on board because they just signed Wu-Tang Clan and Levert and SWV, and samples were becoming an issue, and so they decided to bring me in-house to handle everything. Didn't like
I
the
knew you at
politics.
Diamond Time. It was on Lafayette Street. I knew you at Diamond Time.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's very political. Really didn't like it, but I wanted to learn how a record company worked.
And that's the best way to do it. Jump into the fire.
I did. I didn't have a computer for the first 2 weeks, so I used to hang out in the file room, and that's where I actually got my hands on reading the Elvis Presley agreement. I read,
Oh,
yeah,
how cool.
I read David Bowie's agreement. I sat there and I just read agreements with recording artists to get a taste on all that stuff. And I
Wow.
worked there about 18 months, and I got promoted like 3 times while I was there. I was there for about 18 months, and then Joe left. And what was Bob's name? Bob came over to be president. I said, "Hey, no disrespect, but I'm going to leave. But I will handle I'm out. But I'll handle all your sample clearances as DMG clearances, and it's going to be a savings for you because you're not going to pay a salary. You don't need to pay my health insurance. There's no overhead cost. I offered them a discount rate, and then I went to every label. I went to RCA. I went to Arista. I went to Epic. I went to Columbia, and I did
Smart.
deals with every label. And I knew I needed to make a certain amount of money because I had just bought my first house with my husband at that time. And I'm like, sink or swim. We're either going to be able to pay our mortgage or I'm going to go pump gas. It is what it is. And we were successful. And when we
I
took
love that.
Yeah.
What year was that? When did you start DMG?
DMG opened up its doors on January 1st, 1996. I had clients lined up in 1995 waiting for me to open doors. I was supposed to work through the end of the year, but that was the year of New York's huge snowstorm back in the days when we used to get like 5 feet of snow in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't even able to go into my job at RCA Records at the end. And that's when clients started coming to me and we opened our doors, got incorporated, and we were busy the moment our doors opened.
Day one.
From day one. Yeah.
Yes. What made you move from New York to Delaware?
That was all 9/11. So my son, who I got at birth, he's adopted, but because
adopted too.
Oh, that's right. And so and so is my fiance. And so
True.
The courts shut down, if you remember, during 9/11. So
I do remember.
So the adoption
everything shut down, by the way.
The adoption process was held, was put on hold until the world became better. And then as soon as the adoption was finalized, my husband at the time wanted to go back to Delaware. He just didn't want to be in New York anymore. And so that's where we originally grew up. And the way I had structured DMG was a company. I never wanted to pay overhead for rent. I always wanted to be working out of my home. And even the staff I ended up hiring, everyone started working out of their homes. And so moving to Delaware was not a big deal. And everyone was concerned, like, how are you going to do meetings? How are you going to be able to see people in New York? I'm like, you don't see me anyway. Do you really need to see me, or do you want me to be at my desk getting the same
Working.
deals done? And that's where I think we've been so successful at DMG is we've never asked to be in the spotlight. We want to be behind the scenes, get the deals done, work at our desks, and make things happen.
Yes.
Now we're big. Now
You're huge.
we're
Yeah.
we're having our first company retreat. We have 15 people at DMG plus the 3 interns.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was that big. I knew it was big
We're
because you kind of clear everybody's albums, and we're going to get into that because I want everybody that's listening to this to understand the importance of clearing samples, especially in light of what happened with Sony suing the young rapper that they couldn't even get a hold of. And we'll get into that in a second. But I love that you left New York and went to Delaware. I was personally sad because I didn't get to see you as much, and I was selfishly, uh, devastated that you left New York. But I love that because it taught me that I could leave New York. And I left New York not long after you did, just because I wanted to live like an adult. I realized that New York is really expensive, and I was living like a college student in my 40s. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to, have a lifestyle. I was living in a loft with 5 EDM DJs. I'm not exaggerating. And while it was great and it was fun and it was cool and it was funky, um, it wasn't conducive to great mental health and being an adult. I've lived like I was 20 up into my 40s, and I moved to Memphis first, as you remember, and then I moved to Atlanta. But I got to do things like buy my first house. I was in my 50s, but I got to buy my first house and do things that other adults do in their 20s.
Yeah, I remember living in a loft in New York City also. I went through that phase.
Yes, it was the bomb.
Yeah. I was in a loft on Lafayette Street between Grand and Broome. And
Oh, nice.
it was industrial space. And we pretended we were
Nice.
a company called Flush. And we said we painted toilet seats. And like on our door was a painted toilet seat. And there was just a bunch of us, just crazy kids,
Just living there.
living in a 2,000 square foot loft. Yeah.
I love that you named it Flush. That's really funny, by the way.
Yeah, we were crazy back then. But now, the way things are set up, like before, the pandemic, every one of my employees works out of their home. So we've got people in London, Florida,
New Orleans.
New Orleans, Asheville, North Carolina,
Oh, I
Colorado,
love Asheville.
Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland. So we're everywhere. And now I launched a second company in October, my publishing company. And those people, we've got someone in Sweden, England, the same thing. So that's just, I really thought the pandemic was going to teach the world you don't need to pay the overhead costs and you don't need to ride an employee's butt to get work. I think everyone worked even harder during the pandemic, but
Yes.
people are going back to their offices.
Yes. Yes. People are very much back in their offices now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my company just went remote. I've got an employee in New York, one in West Virginia. My employee that was here in my office with me on 2 days ago moved to South Carolina to take care of a family member that's elderly and a little sickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't cross my mind. Like it just makes sense. It just makes sense.
It does, and obviously there are jobs where you need to be in person, and then
Yes.
individuals that need to be around people, and I understand and respect that,
Yes.
and so we make it clear even with our interns. Our interns don't come in. Our interns,
Wow.
so we have interns in New York, Pennsylvania. We've had interns in California. We've had interns every place.
That's awesome. And they're still learning. They're still able to gain the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Because that's really what matters.
It's
hence why we're here today.
Yeah, it's all about knowledge and sharing knowledge.
Yes.
I think I get really mad at people in the industry that still aren't sharing. Like there's a private Facebook group I belong to in the world of synchronization and stuff. And when someone's like, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so, can you help me? And someone's like, sure, I'll DM you the answer. I was like, why would you DM them the answer? Why wouldn't you show it to them?
Share it to everybody.
And so like someone asked for the splits for Past the Cavossier Part 2. it's got like 16 writers, and so I took a picture of my chart of every writer, their split, their publisher, their PRO, and their split, took a picture of it and
That's so
posted
helpful.
it and said,
That's so helpful.
this is how you share
This
information.
is how you not only share information, but now somebody's going to be doing splits with like 8, 10, 12, 14 people. They're going to remember that's there. They're going to be able to go back and say, okay, how did they do it? Like they're going to be able to learn like and apply, because learning is great, but learning and applying is where it's at.
Exactly. And so there's a lack of, in the music industry especially, there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of
Yes.
sharing.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
that's one of the things. That's why I'm doing this, and I want to continue these conversations. We need to get back out there and educate again. And it's not
Agreed.
these music conferences because they're too expensive for the average person to attend.
Yes.
We need to
Yes.
start doing stuff remote. We have the ability to
Yes.
even do the 101 on how to do a sample clearance and what it entails. We answer every email that is sent to us, even that goes to our website. It comes to me, where I explain not only our fees, but what standard sample fees are, what turnaround time is, what it involves. So people know, I want to bill someone my fees, and it's not a lot of money. $700 stage one, $700 stage two, not a lot of money.
No.
But if they don't understand the additional fees, I feel as I'm stealing their money. Or if I knew something's going to get denied, I'll tell someone it's going to get denied. You
Yes.
don't want to pay me that money. I know it's going to get denied.
Yes.
Honestly.
Exactly. Do you have a space on your website of artists that are like you cannot sample them? Like I think Anita Baker, you can't sample. The Beatles used to not be sampleable. Is there a place where they can go to learn?
See, you said used to. And so I would never post something because you never know how someone's going to change.
Got it. Because they may change.
Beyonce used a Beatles master when she did the Blackbird. Drake has used a Beatles composition, but it was re-recorded by someone else. So there are instances where it can get cleared and it can happen. I cleared the Beatles for Josh Fox. He has a relationship with Yoko and he has a relationship with Ringo, and it was for one of his environmental anti-fracking films. We didn't have a lot of money, and the Beatles were fabulous, or the individuals, to accommodate so we could use it in opening and closing credits because it was like an impact.
Amazing.
Of what fracking is. So
yes.
I don't do that, but I will warn people like, hey, this isn't going to clear. 99% of the time they deny.
Yes.
And, Anita Baker is 100% denial. And then you have people like, well, so-and-so used it. I'm like, yeah, but did they clear it?
Right. And that's really the number one question that I have for you, because that's what people ask me the most. Deborah Mannis-Gardner, can I sample a song, and if I'm not charging or making any money, can I just use it and not clear it?
And the answer is no, because you might not be making money, but you've sampled it for a reason to show off your skill. So in essence, you're advertising who you are and what you are. And so it does have a deemed value.
So they're benefiting from it.
Exactly.
I get asked that so many times, and here I am like 32 years later saying, really? We're still asking that basic question.
So save the clip and put it on your website.
I'm going to. I'm going to, because it's the number one thing that drives me friggin' nuts is somebody saying, but I'm putting it out there for free. I'm not making any money. It's like anywhere that you put it, it's not free. Right. You're stealing something from somebody and saying that you're using it for free, but you're not. You have no ownership and you're just taking it.
Right. Exactly.
If I steal your car to deliver free food to the homeless, I'm still stealing your car.
That's like, remember when I used to talk about sampling? What is the difference between stealing a piece of bubble gum and stealing a fur coat? It's both theft. It just has a different value.
Correct.
And so I don't I always try to remind people, you don't expect your cup of coffee for free. People buy bottled water. Why should a sample be free?
Correct. So can we start? Will you explain what sample clearance is and what needs to be cleared when somebody wants to use somebody else's music or voice?
So there's two parts to it. There's the publishing side and there's the master side. And so I remember back in the day we used to call it a replay. Now we use the word interpolation. I don't even know who came up with the word interpolation. I keep thinking Ian Allen did.
Somebody who was good at spelling, apparently.
I remember Ian Allen was using that. I'm like, Ian's been in this business since the beginning. He was at Jive Records as an intern, and now he's like the best ears in the business. And I'm like, interpolation? Who came up with this word? So an interpolation is that you either have resung or replayed elements of a composition, and therefore you only need to secure consent and a quote for those publishing rights.
So you don't have to clear the master side when it gets replayed.
If it's replayed or resung. If you've lifted the original recording from the master, wherever you've lifted something from, there's two sides. You need to clear the publishing, but you also need to clear the master.
Got it.
So we jump ahead to the year 2024, and masters have so many different new meanings now because of the internet. So people aren't just sampling recordings. People are sampling dialogue from films or TV. Sounds. People are sampling people speaking on Instagram or TikTok. And so people in the likeness of their voice. So you need to clear that as well. So it's become all these different new levels of stuff. So it's not just boom and 1 and 2. I have a client that just sampled from the soundboard from a Broadway show.
Wow.
And I had to think about that. And I had conversations with my team like,
how do you clear that?
Well, we found out who owns the rights to the show.
Got it.
Then we need to
which
delve
would be
in.
The master, technically.
Technically. However, does the theater who had the board, who recorded it, have any rights to that? It's kind of like when you record, if you sample someone doing an interview, okay? And then that interview appears on YouTube, and that's where you lifted it from. You're getting permission from the person's voice, the likeness. Let's say it's an interview of James Baldwin.
Okay.
And so you'd have to get it from the estate. But then you'd also have to find out who owns the production of that interview because they own the master rights of the recording. So all these different levels. Technology has just made it very different. It used to be people dug through the crates and you'd have vinyl, and that's where we would get our information. Now,
and it was so easy because all the information was in the liner notes.
Right. And now people dig through the crates on the internet. So it's a whole other world of clearances. It's intricate. It's fun. It's a challenge. And then, the other thing that's happening is fractionalized publishing, where you can have one song written by one writer, but you can have 4 publishers. And I'm dealing with that with the Rod Temperton song, where Warner Chappell used to have 100%. Now they have 87.5%. No, they have 85%. And the other 15%, we know, part of it's with Anthem, part of it's with Universal, and we can't find 4%. And we're like, what happened to it? And we're like, can you reach out to Mr. Temperton's widow? Well, she doesn't know who sold off that 4%. Because people have the rights to sell stuff. Once you sell it, if you sell something to someone else, they can do whatever the hell they want with it. So someone sells at 4%. So it's getting intricate. I love the challenge. I'm not going to stop. So back to sample clearances. So you as a producer or artist, what have you, you have lifted or interpolated someone else's intellectual property, someone else's copyright, and you've incorporated it into your song. You come to DMG and you say, okay, now I need to get permission. And our job as a clearance company is to evaluate what was actually used, make sure people are forthright. Sometimes people say it was replayed and we go, really? Really?
Because it sounds exact.
Yeah.
I hear the crackle from the vinyl.
Even though you sped it up, it still sounds like the original. Or I chopped it and flipped it. And you're like, really?
Yeah, I can tell what it is.
Yeah. So first we evaluate what the use is. Then we see how many copyright holders are involved. And then we advise people immediately what kind of fees we're looking at. So for example, in 2024, most publishers charge a non-recoupable fee of $2,500 each. Back in the day, we used to come up with a dollar amount and everyone would get their prorated share. Now everyone wants their own dollar amount. And so if you've got 4 publishers and they each want that $2,500, there's $10,000 to start off with on the pub side. And then the publishers are going to ask to own a piece of the new copyright if they approve the use. On the master side, the labels cannot own a piece of the new recording. Most recording artists have a contract with the label, and you have to deliver that master without anyone else owning that master. So the labels usually take
Mm.
a recoupable advance against a percentage of PPD.
What's PPD?
It's price per dealership, which is almost irrelevant since, there's limited numbers of vinyl and CDs, but, people still do that. But it could be affected on the downloads. But then you have to
Got
come
it.
up with a different value for streaming because streaming has a different value. And so that is a percentage of usually artist net receipts for that additional value. The equation is usually a multiple of 5. For example, if the sampled master holder says, I want 2% of PPD for those digital downloads or for the hard configurations, the percentage for streaming would be 2 times 5 or 10% of artist net receipts. Universal
Oh,
came up
wow.
with that equation and everyone pretty much follows suit. There is
Interesting.
one label that has decided, and that's Sony, and they like to do a percentage of gross across the board. And so if their quote is 2% of gross, that just gets applied right across everything. So, and
It's funny.
it's still evolving.
Their recording contracts were always that as well. Everybody else would quote, um, for the artists, back in the 90s, they would quote on the retail selling price and on the wholesale selling price. And Sony always quoted on the retail selling price.
Yeah,
They always had to be different. Looks like they still are.
they are. So and sometimes people think once you have a quote, you're done. And I have to remind my clients, and that's why I do everything in what we call stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is a certain fee. We research the copyright, we send out the letters of requests, and we negotiate a quote or make sure that we get a response from them. And that's stage 1. But that's not the end. Stage
No,
2 is you need to make
the
sure that
paperwork.
the paperwork, the copyright holder has to get paid. You need to deliver splits. You need to request a license on the master side. And so we even have it in our boilerplate emails to remind people just because you have a quote doesn't mean you can release it until we confirm the deal.
Correct.
So they can come after you. You don't have to wait for signed paperwork or contracts because that takes time. But there is a paper trail that we do at DMG. We send emails confirming the deal saying, my client has accepted this quote. Please stand by for further information. Then the next step is, our client's ready to pay. Please send us an invoice and a W-9. Or if it's, through Uniport, we help get them set up. And then the last part is, as a publisher, we make sure they get all the new writers, publishers, and splits. And on the master side, licensing information to go to contract. So it's not glamorous what we do.
It's not, but it's so important. And what I love about you guys, well, there's many things that I love about you, but there's 2 things that I just want to point out here, if you don't mind me like singing your praises. One is because you've been doing this for so long, what's fair and acceptable. So when we're getting a quote from a publisher or a master rights holder, I already know that you've beat them up a little bit because okay, you know what? You gave me a price of this the last time we talked, or this person over here is only charging this, but you're charging that. It varies too much. It doesn't make sense. So I love that about you. And then the second thing, aside from the fact that you already know what's fair and acceptable, is you guys are so on point in following the paper trail through that I know that all the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed. So in the instance of this paperwork, it's so incredibly important. But for me, it's like the last thing I want to do because I'm dealing with the marketing side. I'm dealing with the making of the money side. I'm dealing with the creatives. I'm dealing with so many things that I could easily overlook somebody not sending back a signed contract. And then 2 years from now, all of a sudden I'm getting served in a lawsuit because they say I never cleared the sample. And you guys have handled all that paperwork for me. So it's like, not true. I know it was done because these guys did it and they're professional and this is all they do.
And we don't
All day,
stop.
every day.
So even after we've been paid for stage 2 and a year has passed, we still chase people to make
Yes,
contracts. I mean, I have a whole department that does that. And then
exactly.
we did a deal with Ignite, is where we keep everything in the clouds. So I'm actually able to go back. It was kind of funny. I'm planning. I'm an advisor for Snoop, and we got all of his rights back, and I'm able. And someone was saying to me, back in 1994, people didn't do buyouts. This was before I opened my company, but I still had scans of stuff. And I went, here's a document proving that Rhino did do buyout deals in 1994. And they're like, well, it wasn't for all media worldwide in perpetuity. I'm like, here again,
Here it is.
right there, fine print. So, and it's great that we have the ability to do that. And I have
It's
every email.
amazing.
I have every email that's ever gone in and out of DMG since 1996. A lot of it has been
I love that.
when the servers couldn't handle as much. Like I didn't use Microsoft or any of those because they couldn't handle the amount of
The
email.
volume.
Yeah, the volume.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I too have kept every email. Sadly, even the printed ones. So my basement is 71 boxes of paperwork from the 90s, but I'm not willing to let it go because, it's the business plan for Tupac. It's a copy of Eminem's first recording agreement. And it's in there somewhere. I don't exactly know where it is. It's letters from Tupac from prison. There's no way I'm getting rid of any of those papers.
No, but it should all be scanned.
It
We
should
actually
all be digitized.
we just spent money for a catalog that we possibly will be acquiring from a family estate. And the first thing we did is we spent the money and we had absolutely everything scanned. We hired an outside company to handle everything. But that's something,
So smart.
especially because some of that stuff might go into a museum, if you think
Yes.
about it. So,
I have a lot of museum pieces.
yeah.
I just didn't know it back then because you live life. You don't realize until, the future how important someone becomes.
Yeah. I remember, the stuff I had for Biggie, I actually sent back to the family, all the stuff that I
I
had.
love you for that.
Yeah.
I love you for that. That's awesome. What is the best part of your job? What's your favorite part?
Um, I like working on unique projects, but I think it's the challenge of everything, the end results. You know, it's kind of interesting. Everyone always says, well, they always say, "What's your favorite thing you ever worked on?" I'm like, I've worked on over
All of it.
100,000 songs at least.
Yeah.
One of my favorites used to be "Pimp a Butterfly." It was just working with Kendrick on that album with all the different producers, was just incredible. But then I did Hamilton, and that was pretty darn amazing.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
then recently I did Beyonce's country album. And I actually reached out to him and I said, this was as great as the Hamilton project because I felt as though what she accomplished on that album crossed over to so many different people, color,
Yeah.
age, background. And that's what Hamilton did. Hamilton opened up Broadway and theater to a group of people that would have never
Agreed.
go see a show.
Ever gone to see a show?
And then I just saw an interview that Miss Vice President did where she talks about Vice President Harris, where she talks about Beyonce just saying that, I'm going to be me and I'm going to be who I am. And I hope that you'll listen and be part of this.
I love that. And obviously the fans have because I think it's still at number one.
Yeah.
It's done really well. My favorite Deborah story, and I'm not going to mention names because I don't know if you do or not, but I remember, I want to say it was either the day before the Grammys or 2 days before the Grammys. Do you know what story I'm about to tell?
The DJ Khaled one?
Okay, you will mention names. So let me let you tell the story because that's my favorite story because you did it.
I
You
did it.
delivered it.
Well, the thing is, I was drinking shots of tequila
I love this story.
when Khaled reached out to me about this urgent clearance, and I'm checking, I'm like, and I always drop everything for certain clients, and I'm looking it up. I'm like, no problem. We got this. And then it was a song that had an uncleared Dionne Warwick sample in it. And this was on a Friday night, and the Grammys was on Sunday. And fortunately, I knew.
And he wanted to drop it at the Grammys, right?
Drop it at the Grammys, and we got it cleared in time for it to be dropped at the Grammys.
Yeah, wasn't it like minutes before? it was like you did it. You're like, yes.
Khaled challenges me though. Like we got a Michael Jackson cleared on his last single that he did.
Wow.
Michael Jackson vocals cleared on a single. So
wow,
my clients like to challenge me, and like when you have that end result, it's like this is awesome. This is great. Yeah. Drake sometimes gives me stuff the night before he's releasing. Sometimes he gives me a couple weeks. I mean, but they're so nice. Like sometimes you just read all this, fighting, which I think is some of it is performance on social media and everything like that.
Agreed.
As a matter of fact, it's like Drake's team. That's the binging sound. They're texting me an emergency right now, and I'm like, I'm ignoring you. But
I'm sorry, I'm talking to Wendy.
um, but I think what makes it really special is the teams that we work with, like Drake's team and Khaled's team and Beyonce's
Mm,
team. And I know
mm,
there's this personification of who they are and this, that, and the other. I only work with people that are kind, and my clients are kind.
I
And
love
they,
that.
and they are just really big names, but they are really nice people and nice teams. And you know what? If you've got a team of people that are really kind, I'm pretty sure that person is kind. When people are angry or nasty, the person that they work for is usually not kind to them. And so when people are like, well, how do you know Beyonce is nice? Because I've never talked to her. I've been doing her clearances since her first solo album. Me and Eric Weissman, but how else could you assume she's not kind if everyone that you talk to in her team is kind and respectful? Like when I got
And
engaged
happy.
and happy, I got messages from them like congratulations. Like,
Yes.
it just,
Yes.
so it says that's how I know that these people must be good people because of the way their people are treated. And that's how I
I
treat
love
my
that.
staff, my team. You treat
Yes.
people with respect and kindness and it's going to
If
flow.
you love your team and you treat them like family, they will return the love and they will act like family, not in a bad family way.
Exactly.
So you did just get engaged. First of all, congratulations. You
Thank
got
you.
engaged in, was it Paris?
I got engaged in Iceland. I think
Iceland.
Drew was
Okay.
planning to do it in Paris, but we had a couple of bumps. So when we got to the airport, we're in New York, and we go through security, and I handed him his wallet and his phone, and then we went to go get some Icelandic currency. And I'm like, hey babe, you got a $5 on you? And he's like, oh, I can't find my wallet. I went, oh my god, we got pickpocketed already. And he's like, well, I'm gonna go back to security. I said, well, let me check your backpack. Now, my fiance has never raised his voice at me in 5 years. And at the airport, he says, he calls me Buttercup. That's my nickname. He goes, BC, do not go in the backpack. And I was like, whoa, this is going to be a really bad trip. So we get to Iceland. The volcano had just erupted. So parts of Iceland doesn't have heat, doesn't have hot water, the whole 9 yards. We're doing our thing in Iceland. We're out on this truck in the middle of the night trying to look for the northern lights. I'm like, I'm sitting on the truck. I'm not going to go out there in the freezing cold to look for northern lights. The
Right.
next day we get back to the hotel. Again, no heat, no hot water. And he's like, babe, if I give you something, will you hold on to it forever? And I said, if this is weed, no. I'm not going to carry weed into Paris. He's like, no. And he opens up this beautiful, it's a black diamond ring. And he's like, no. And he shows me the ring. I said, are you asking to marry you? And he's like, yes, BC, will you marry me? And I was like, absolutely.
Oh,
And the ring
yeah.
was in the backpack.
The backpack. Yeah, that's why I didn't want you to go through it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to propose at Newark fucking airport. Good for him. Good for
Exactly.
him.
Exactly.
It is so hard to have a relationship in the music industry. Like I realized last year, and shame on me for taking this long to notice, that the longest relationship I've ever had is 7 years. And that's really sad. I've had a longer relationship with you than I've had with a man. Right. And I realized this is a problem. So I dropped myself into therapy so that I could learn to build relationships. And I learned a whole lot about myself that I won't bore you guys with, but like about feeling emotions, which I never did. For me, it was happy, sad, and angry, and that was it. That's all I knew. And I thought I was feeling them all. I thought like I was normal. But how difficult is it to have a relationship in the music industry?
Well, it is difficult. So I was married for 19 years, but unfortunately, my son's father, had substance problems, and unfortunately, as my client know, he ended up taking his life, which was just really
Mm,
a hard situation. And then I went into a very abusive relationship, who I think used me because I was in the industry. So you get worried, and so I met I met Drew outside the music industry, but he knew who I was, and he respects who I am because I know I'm an alpha. I know that and I'm a Virgo, and And a lot of men are intimidated by powerful, smart, and strong women. And I think that is really the hardest part in this industry, is being a
And
woman.
A-type women, because for me, and I live in the South, so men want women that are a little bit submissive. And I can be submissive, but I'm not I'm not a submissive woman. I'm an A-type, you know? I get
Exactly.
shit done.
Exactly. And so I'm really lucky with Drew. In 5.5 years, we've only had 2 arguments because we
Wow.
respect each other and we talk to each other and we support each other. And he doesn't take my bullshit either. I'm just really fortunate to have someone like this. But it's not
Agreed.
easy being a woman in the industry. uh, Anyway, when you're tough or you're stern, you're a fucking bitch. But
Yeah.
if am I allowed to curse in your podcast?
Yes, of course. Who are you asking? Have you met me? Fuck.
Yeah, I was just speaking at the University of Ohio, and I was like really careful not to like use profanity while I was on a panel. Um,
I wish I
so
could do that.
yeah, it's a skill. Um,
Yeah. I can't even do it in grade school. It's like, really, Wendy? But go ahead.
so it's hard. It's really hard being a woman. There's so many women who don't have children either because it's hard to even have a child.
Right here.
It's like you have to have one or the other. And people always say, I look up to you, Deborah, because you were able to do it all. And I said, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, like my son was adopted because I couldn't have a biological child, but I had him at birth. I had a bouncy seat on my desk next to me while I'm doing deals. And then I created ground rules for my clients. Like, I leave the office at dinner because dinner is where we sit down and we communicate. How was your day? I will come back to work after dinner and I will keep working till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. But dinner, when Curtis lived at home, was dinner. And so I create
Boundaries.
those boundaries. Absolutely. And my clients have all respected that. They've all respected that.
And you've raised such an amazing kid like Curtis. And I say kid, he's an adult now, but Curtis is such a kind and genuine and authentic human being. Like you raised an amazing, amazing human being.
I really I thank you. I did, and he
Yeah,
was
you
like,
did.
doesn't he want to go in the music industry? And I said, no, he
Thank
loves
God.
music. Like, he got turned on to music going down those YouTube rabbit holes. Finding the Yoshida brothers, then doing a cover of the music from Nightmare Before Christmas because he was a Danny Elfman fan. Because I raised my son in that macabre kind of. He used to grab all the bones around the house and put it in his bed when he would take naps. You
Oh,
know,
that's funny.
but
That's really
so
funny.
he got a degree in environmental science with a minor in education. He's working at this educational camp, and he's the bug man. Where like in Harry Potter, where Slugworth walks around with test tubes.
Yeah,
That is Curtis, and he'll like sweep up a bug, and he'll show the kids so they can draw it or ask questions.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so he's going to help save the planet.
I love it. Good for you. And I got to tell you, nobody collects skeletons like you do. Your Instagram, first of all, I love it around Halloween because that's when it really comes out. But you're like an all year skeleton person.
We have skeletons around our fire pit in the backyard, and we have a pond in our backyard with
Literally.
a life-size skeleton mermaid. We've got, they're classy, and then we've got skeleton art throughout the house. But
I love it.
now it's very chic and hip that people do that. So
It
I've been doing it
is.
for a long time. Yeah,
You've been doing it forever, for real.
forever. Yeah, I have been doing it forever. I mean, when I was married, the first time I was married on Halloween.
Oh,
So
were you? I didn't know
yeah,
that. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Big
Okay.
mistake, because once you have kids, you can't go trick or treating. You can't celebrate your anniversary on the same day. So I always tell young people,
Oh,
think
right.
about it before you do it. Maybe get married on Day of the Dead instead of Halloween.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because then you don't get to celebrate. Kids always come first.
Yes.
So is there anything that you have read or anything you do that is maybe not music related that has really helped you in life? And I'm talking more about like life stuff now more so than music industry because we never talk about like how we build ourselves to be better humans and that totally affects our jobs. So how
So
do
here,
you chill out or what do you do to become a better Deborah?
that's a great question because here we are. I'm 59 now, and I'm just learning I'm just learning now how to
Me
become a
too.
better Deborah and how to
At
do things the
61, I'm
right way.
just learning.
Yeah, and so I'm still not even there to give advice on that. Um,
Got it.
because I still find myself, I'm always checking emails. I'm always, on my computer or my phone looking at stuff. But I think now that I have this partner in my life who's kind of pulled me away from always being engrossed in that. Like when we went to Europe for 10 days, I didn't bring a laptop.
Oh, good for you.
First time ever doing something
Your
like that. It was
bag
crazy.
must have felt so light.
So I had to make room for
Wow.
all the cheese we were getting instead. But so I think for myself though, I mean like gardening and like it's not flowers. I'm really into vegetable gardening,
Oh, that's cool.
more than flower gardening.
I didn't know that. I didn't know this
Yeah.
about you. Oh, I love this.
So like two Halloweens ago, we had a lot of pumpkins, and I guess animals ate them and then pooped all over. We have a lot of foxes and stuff in our area, and I guess wherever they ate it and pooped it, we ended up having pumpkins growing the front of the house, the side of the
Oh,
house,
that's cool.
overtook my garden, like all over the place. And so that brought me a lot of joy. We were really careful. The animals didn't get to it.
Pumpkin poop brought you a lot of joy. I love this.
Pumpkin poop, yeah. So, yeah, we're actually working on getting our gardens ready for this season,
This season.
to
Good.
eat what we plan and to share it. And also, we really like to cook. And so we spend a lot of time in the kitchen. Passover's coming up next week, and we've done tons of cooking for Passover. So we're really, I'm overweight, but I still love food, and I'm just, always going to enjoy good food. It's
Me
always going
too.
to
It's
be
my
where I
thing.
am. It's my thing.
Yeah,
When we were in Europe, we specifically chose restaurants to go to that we knew were either
me
Michelin
too.
star or what have you, or really good
I
dining.
chose restaurants before I chose hotels.
I stayed
Guilty.
I stay at the same hotel. Like if I go to a hotel and I really like it, that's the hotel I go
You
back
stay
to.
there?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to move around. And I do this in New York now. I haven't lived in New York for God, 20 years, which causes me pain because it still feels like home to me. But as a former resident and a tourist now, ooh, that caused me pain. I stay in a different neighborhood. So I do the same thing. Paris is my favorite city. I go once a year. And Le Marais is my favorite neighborhood. So I'll always spend 1 or 2 days there just because I love it so much. But I try to stay in a different neighborhood each time just so I experience a different vibe.
I'll have to get the name of your hotel because I've been staying at the same one in Paris, up in Marmont near Sacré-Cœur in that part because I love that area. And
I
and
like that area too, but it's so
Bruce,
far from what I wanna do. I stay at a place called the Six is probably my favorite hotel in Le Marais, and it's quaint and it's affordable.
see, yeah, because we've discovered new stuff this time. Like we found the Salvador Dali Museum
Isn't
that
that awesome?
had no idea there was one in Paris, so we
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. And then Amsterdam, it's the Pulitzer, which I knew was a very expensive hotel, but at the end of a trip on your 10th day, you really want something nice with a
Yes.
good shower. So it's
Yes.
been, but you're right. New York, I always stay at different hotels.
I do. I
Always.
move around because I just want there's so many different neighborhoods and I just want a different vibe. There's neighborhoods like when I lived there and I lived there for 20 some odd years, I would not go to 42nd Street, like that whole area,
Right.
Times Square. And now that's my favorite neighborhood. As a tourist, I love being in Times Square. I love the hustle and the bustle. But when I lived there, it was like, oh my God, I can't walk down the street. I have to go around. Oh my God, it sucks. It's crowded. But now I love it. I love staying in the Times Square area, and you can stay anywhere in that area and get a different vibe. Like you
Right.
can stay on the north side and get a vibe. It's more like 57th Street area or down in the upper 30s. That's a different vibe. Like it's still Times Square, but it's all a different vibe.
See, now, I like the old Jewish section, down by, what is it called? The Seven Daughters and Cats and that area
Yes,
down there.
yeah.
But when
The
I lived
Lower
in New
Side,
York,
like Orchard Street.
I love it down there. But, back when I lived in New York, I never went above 14th Street. I always said, oh, I'll get a nosebleed. So the only place I
That's
went
funny.
above 14th Street is when Limelight was open and I would go to communion. So
21st Street, yeah.
yeah,
Or is
yeah.
it 19th? Yeah, exactly.
So I totally get that.
Exactly. You should definitely check out Le Marais in Paris the next time you go. It's the Jewish area. It's the Jewish neighborhood, and the history is so rich, and it's really wonderful. It's just a wonderful area. If you forget where it is, just go to the Picasso Museum, and from there, you'll see the Jewish Heritage Museum. It's amazing.
I'll hit you up
That
because
whole neighborhood.
I might be there in October, so I'll
Oh,
definitely let you
good,
know. Yeah.
good, good. So
Awesome.
is there anything that I should ask you that I haven't asked you? I know I kept it really basic today
Yeah.
to sample clearance, but I don't want to overwhelm people. I didn't want to go into a big explanation of publishing because I wanted people to get all the way through this video and hear us talk about life because I think that life is important. It's important to have a relationship. It's important to have a life. It's important to have kids if you want them.
Exactly. I always tell people you have to be happy. You have to be happy with the job that you have. And if
Yeah.
you're not, you need to find something else because most of your waking time is at your job. If you
Yes.
think about that. Um, and that if it's toxic because of the other people or because of your boss, you need to
Yes.
address that or you need to go someplace else. And I think that's
Usually go someplace else. It's hard to
right.
fix toxic.
Exactly. And I also try to remind people whatever your career is today doesn't mean it's going to be your career tomorrow. You know,
Correct.
my specialty, you're right, is sample clearances. That was my love. But that also led into the foray of me working on video games. I handle all of Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
We did grand rights, like I did
And
Hamilton.
music supervising for film, you've won awards for
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. We did the Defiant ones, and I just finished a film called Kiss the Future, which actually deals with the war in Sarajevo. We worked on it last year. We put a
Wow.
pause in it because of the strikes. It went to movie theaters in February. It launches on Paramount in May. And we felt it was so important because we were dealing with the Ukraine. And so we thought
Right.
the film would actually help with what's going on with the Ukraine. And now we're jumping ahead and now we've got Gaza. So you have this continuation of these wars going on and we're not learning. In Sarajevo, it
No.
wasn't until NATO got involved and bombed for 4 days after the huge genocide that it ended. Okay. So is NATO going to get involved with Ukraine? Is NATO going to go get involved in Gaza? I don't know. So that's a pretty important film that I worked on as a music supervisor. I'm also very actively involved in new technology and having these controversial conversations about my thoughts on AI, which I know angers people. For me, AI is like an interpolation. I know it's artificial intelligence grabbing stuff from other places, but that's intellectual property. And why shouldn't that original person or creator get compensation from where it's getting grabbed? And I was like, well, the technology isn't there. How are they going to be able to keep track of it? I'm like, well, there's metadata. There's got to be ways that if you are creating a system to grab stuff, why can't it be coded so you know where it's coming from? And if you're going to use the argument it's fair use, which was the argument that they were trying to use with the New York Times, well, then every interpolation should be fair use. Which is not that I'm not saying I agree with that, but if you're going to use that fair use argument for AI, then you have to use fair use for interpolation.
Everything else. Yeah.
Everything else. So I'm a little bit controversial when it comes to AI. And I always see people kind of go, whoa, where are you coming from? But you know how protective I am about sample clearances and interpolations.
Yes. And ownership and people's
I,
rights.
Exactly. And I love sampling and I love interpolations. And I think it is a huge skill to be able to incorporate a bass line from one song and to flip it and to alter it and to put it in a new song and have a whole different
Isn't that amazing? A whole different
revival and
vibe and
light.
song and art.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love sampling. I'm a huge fan of sampling, but I'm also very artist centric and I believe that people should get paid for their contributions to a new song, a new art form, whatever that is. Have you noticed an increase in sampling? Because I have.
I'm always busy. There's still a huge amount. It's funny. Common called me the other day and we were just talking about some stuff that because he's one of my staff is working on another project and he's like, hey, I just wanted to say hi and thank you. I'm like, Common, do you realize I've been working with you since your very first album? And he's like,
Wow.
yeah, since his very first album when Derek Dudley was his manager.
I remember Derek.
Right. And like I just did Mary J. Blige and I said, I worked on her first album. There's that lawsuit going on with Mary J. Blige from Aaron Fuchs. Well, I don't have the paperwork because that was back when I was at Diamond Time and it was like 1992. But Aaron Fuchs used to do all media buyouts, and I think he probably got paid $10,000, and now he's suing Mary, and no one's come to me. I don't have the paperwork because I was at Diamond Time, but I remember we used to do buyout deals with Aaron for Impeach the President. Those were all buyout deals.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So I mean, I was there in the beginning with all of that stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. De La
Yes.
Soul.
And you kind of worked with De La. Oh gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that was such a big deal. You worked on this last on clearing the old stuff, did you not?
Yeah, I was brought in by Reservoir and by the guys to get everything cleared without penalties. And that's another big thing that we do at DMG is, we've done it for Bobby, for Logic, we've done it for Big Crit, we've done it for Lil Wayne, we've done it for Nicki Minaj, we've done it for De La Soul, we've done it for, Young Thug, where we try to say, don't, you can't get blood from a stone, and stop beating people up when they did these mixtapes that were on the internet. It was just like mixtapes that came out of the trunk of a car. Let's move forward and do a proper deal. And everyone, I'd say 99% of the people have been phenomenal in doing that.
That's awesome.
And now they're seeing their money from the proper licensing and the streaming. There was
Exactly.
no malicious intent back in the early 90s.
No, we just didn't know any better.
We didn't know any better, and we did handshakes, or we did buyouts, and no one's, we weren't a digital age, so people did not save contracts. I had contracts at DMG for all of their loud record stuff that Sony asked me to give back to them, and I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth to scan everything, and I sent them all the boxes.
Wow.
I don't know where they are now. They're gone. Mobb Deep, Raekwon, Wu-Tang.
Wow.
It's all, I don't know where it is. Yeah. So the record companies also are to be blamed for not keeping all these documents, and it goes back to you having that stuff in the basement. A lot of times we think deals weren't done, and they were done. We did buyout deals. I remember clearing James Brown for Me Find Me for $500 for the Hey Hey. I remember that stuff specifically. I'm helping Tony Dofak clean up a situation with What's the 411, and I was actually able to pull up the original deals that were done.
Wow.
With the two samples, yeah. So memories.
That's amazing. And I'm sure you've noticed the incredible increase in value in publishing ownership, because you mentioned that you started a publishing company.
So yeah, and I don't necessarily agree with these, 12 times or 15 times the value. So what I started in October was something I had brought to hundreds of people. And they all said no. Oops, sorry about the dog. Which was taking care of people who've been sampled. Because sometimes people think that $2,500 fee, that's it. And they don't think to register the songs. So what we've done, I am so sorry for the dog.
Not a problem.
So
he's doing what he's supposed to do.
There you go. So we created this company called Are You Organized? AO. And it's really to help people who aren't organized, people who have been sampled, or estates, children who have received these copyrights because their mother or father has passed away, but they're not in the music industry and they really don't know how to register or take care of this stuff. And so what we're doing is we're helping people make sure that their stuff is registered. We're not owning anything. We are straight administration. We're invitation only. And people have to have something that at least has a value of $10,000 to make it worth our time.
Of course.
But we had our first quarter royalty statements. We actually sent them out like a month early. We sent them all out yesterday. And it was kind of nice that people were receiving double, triple, quadruple what they initially got when they were doing stuff on their own and didn't realize about.
That's so awesome.
And we have sub-publishing worldwide. And so I'm trying to help people to make sure that owning copyright is like owning a Picasso. You wouldn't throw it away. You just can't hold it in your hand, but it has a value. So we actually created a whole education segment at AO where we're educating our clients, our writers, our estate, so they know what to do with the stuff. It's kind of exciting.
That's brilliant. And it's especially brilliant to be transparent in an industry where everything is hidden. It's almost like people want companies to exist in chaos and disarray because then they don't really have to pay anybody.
So not
It's
only,
unlike
yeah,
any industry I've ever seen in my life.
right. I always, I remember my dad was doing his bookkeeping for me, and I said, Dad, this is the music industry. You go and you buy a house, you go to contract, you pay for it, then you decide to renegotiate the deal a year
Right.
later. That's an art. That's an artist. That's a deal. That's a music industry deal.
It
You do
is.
a deal, you sign a contract, and then you renegotiate.
Exactly. And
No,
I'm gonna be even a little more negative. You pay a mortgage for 30 years, but you never get to own the house.
right.
That's a record deal.
That's a record deal. That's exactly what it is. Although that's changing now. I mean, there's some attorneys out there who
Yes.
are fabulous that are helping people get their rights back. One of the investors for AO is specifically doing that, helping artists get their rights back and paying the money for them and then doing a 50-50 split till they recoup kind of situation.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
there are good people out there that are, especially in the hip hop and rap community. Here, I'm going to make this statement. I'm going to do it on your podcast because I want people to hear it, which is it was hip hop and rap music that changed the whole structure of publishing. Producers prior to hip hop and rap
Really?
never got publishing or writer credit. Think about it. Who produced the Beatles? Who produced the Rolling
Right.
Stones?
That's
Who
true.
produced Led Zeppelin? They never got writer or publishing credit. Enter hip hop and rap, where producers, how do they earn their revenue? By getting writer's credit and a piece of publishing.
But
Jump
they
ahead.
also make the music. They also really like touch the levers and make, in most cases, not all cases.
So producers
Puffy.
do. Jimmy Iovine was a producer, and he never got
With
writer's
Tom
credit.
Petty. Yeah.
Like, okay, so they did make the music. They were actually involved in that stuff and never got any credit or compensation in that respect. They would get
Mm.
points maybe on the master side as a producer, but they didn't get it on the
But they weren't
publishing
getting
side.
ownership. Interesting. I never thought about that before. You're right.
And so now you jump ahead 2024, and it's not just hip hop and rap. It is rock. It is country. It is absolutely
So
everything
it
with a
really did
producer,
change everything.
in my opinion.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to stand on that soapbox and I'm going to shout it. People should be more grateful for hip hop and rap.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for when the Grammys, I watched the pre-Grammy show on YouTube on my TV of all the hip hop and rap stuff prior to the broadcast. We're still not there for broadcast. We're
Isn't
still
that
not
crazy?
there.
50 years in. Yeah. It's
And,
still a
and,
fad.
and as a clearance agent, I don't have the right to vote. I'm a member of NARIS, but I don't have voting rights because I didn't do anything creative.
Right. Same.
Didn't do anything creative. And then, I was talking to a client and I said, can you imagine, if date back to 1990, if my fee was 1% publishing of every deal I did? I would be so rich I'd own an island.
You'd own an island. I did Eminem's deal and Cash Money's deal. Imagine if I had 1% of M and all the artists on Cash Money.
Yeah.
Or Young Money. Crazy, right?
We'd be rich.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't though. I have no regrets.
Right. But look at Marshall. I mean, Joel got it instead. So he doesn't even control all of his stuff. Joel Martin controls it.
Yes.
Which is sad
Yep.
in my eyes.
Yeah. I'll say this about M. First of all, he's an amazing human being. He's one of the only artists that ever thanked me for the small role that I played early in his career. But he was signed to the Bass Brothers when I met him, and I found a clause in the contract where I thought we could break it. Paul Rosenberg said no, and he's an attorney, so he would know better than me. But I saw a weak spot, and I said, we could go for this. Do you want to try it? And he said no. He said they deserve what they've gotten. I'm not happy with the deal that I did with them, but they brought value, and I signed it. So I'm gonna stay true to my word, and I respected that. And it taught me to do the same thing. If I agree to something, I'm going to stick to it. Even if I learn down the road that I got, I'm still going to stick to what I agreed to because I didn't do the research before I signed the agreement. And
Right.
I didn't read it thoroughly, perhaps, or whatever, and I respect him for that.
They're a great team also. I really enjoy, I never talked to Marshall directly. And back in the day, he used to be next to the phone, but not on the phone. I love every one of his team, from his attorneys to management to everyone that I deal with. Again,
It comes
that
down to
whole
that good
team,
people thing.
Exactly. He must be a good person because everyone I
Yeah.
deal with are so kind. And
Yeah.
so what he personifies, what people think he is versus how he talks and treats people, that's who he is in my eyes. And
Yeah.
that's how I look at people.
I think that's everything. I think how you treat people is, especially how you treat people when they can't benefit you or no one's looking.
Yeah,
That really tells you who a person is.
exactly.
Well, this was great. I'm so thankful that you allowed me to be part of your life today. I love you so, so, so much. And we've had a lot of death in the world lately. And I don't tell you enough how amazing you are, but you inspire me constantly. You're such a badass. And I'm so happy for you and Drew. There's
Well,
no
thank
word.
you. Well, you'll be at the wedding, so you'll get to
Yes, I
celebrate
will.
with them.
And I don't go to weddings, but I'm coming to yours.
If you don't come, you will really regret that.
I this I know. This I know. I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, thank
Thank you
you.
so much for doing this. Is there anything that you wanna talk about that I've left out?
We could spend hours and hours, and I'll come back next year and do it
Yeah,
again and talk about some
please.
other stuff that's going on because our lives are always evolving, and
Yes.
that's exciting. Sometimes people say that they're bored with the music industry or they're bored with this or bored with that. Well,
How?
go down a different rabbit hole, and you're not
Wait
going to be
3
bored anymore.
minutes. It'll change. Or honestly, wait 5 months and it will change. It changes now in every 5 months. I'm noticing new shit. And that's what I love about it because 'cause I'm a knowledge junkie. If
Mhm.
this stayed the same, I would have been in tech. I would be doing something else. There's people to
Yeah,
save everywhere.
absolutely. I love it. Well, thank
Thank you,
you.
my love. I appreciate you so much. There's also an old interview with you and I on my YouTube channel that I invite people to go check out where we went really deep on sample clearance and publishing. I kept it a little bit light today because I didn't want all of your eyes to glaze over because sample clearance can be in the weeds. It can be a little bit thick, but you are the best at it, and thank you.
Thank you.